priority service is number 45. And since we are a little short on time, we're just going to do two verses of that. Number 45, the oil and anointing.
But let's get started on a topic that hits a lot of our lives, and that is the topic of trusting the Lord's providence and how He is always caring for us, even through the tough times. And we'll start with an opening song. Will you rise, please?
Our opening song is number 135. Roll away. 135.
To the sky, super
Jesus Christ, our Heavenly Father, as we kneel before you this morning, remind us of your love and care for each one of us. Remind us that you are at work each moment of our lives so that good things may happen. We ask that you open the pages of your word this morning and help us see these things as true and strengthen us in our conviction that it is so. Our Father, who art in the heavens, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, as in heaven, so on the earth. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts, as we also forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen. O Lord, forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. Amen. Please rise. You'll open your worship brochure. At the top of the second page is our recitation that we'll say together this morning, taken from Luke chapter 12. Are not 5 sparrows sold for 2 copper coins, and not one of them is forgotten before God? But the very hairs of your head are all numbered. Do not fear, therefore. You are more valuable than many sparrows. Please be seated. Okay, so our theme this morning is the Lord cares and he makes good things happen. And to start off with, I want to talk with the young people, and I wonder if you can think back over the last day or week of your life and think of one good thing that happened. What's one good thing that happened to you maybe yesterday or the day before or maybe last week? Can you think of one thing? And if you can do that, I wonder if you can think all the way back to when you were really young, when you were a little kid. And I wonder if you can think of anything that has happened ever since the time that you were born that was good or happy or really fun. What is that one thing? Can you think of one?
Cleaning my room last week.
Cleaning your room last week was good. That was a good thing, it sounds like. Yeah? Okay. So, let's think about this. Let's think about the moment you were born. Is that a good thing? Would you say that's a good thing? That's a good thing, right? And the fact that the Lord gave you a home to live in as you're growing up. Is that a good thing? Yeah, that's a good thing. There are good things happening all the time. And how about, let's see, people in your life that have helped you learn and grow? That's a good thing. So there's just lots of things. We can sit here for an hour and just think of all the good things that have happened in our lifetimes. When you fell down, when you were little, you fell down, you skinned your knee, and the Lord gave there to be someone there to help you with that. Or how about a time when you felt scared or you felt alone? And the Lord sent someone who could help comfort you. Or what if you had a task that you had to accomplish, or some project that you had to do, and you were able to complete that project? That's a good thing. So on we go, thinking about things that have been good in our lives. One of the amazing things about the Lord is that he never stops caring about you. He's always working to help make more good things happen in your life. And even when bad things happen, the Lord never forgets you, and he keeps working to make good things come out of that. So, for example, when an accident happens, and you skin your knee, you fall off your bike and you skin your knee, the Lord, maybe he helps you learn something about that from that. Maybe you learn that, when I'm walking with my little brother, I want to hold his hand so he doesn't fall and skin his knee. Or maybe you've worked hard to accomplish some project and it doesn't turn out the way that you were hoping it would. Darn. And yet maybe there's some good lessons that you learn as a result of that project not quite working out the way you wanted it to. That's a good thing, right? Or something that happens between you and a friend, And it's not a very comfortable thing, and now you feel like the two of you have separated a bit in your friendship. And the Lord finds a way to help you work through that together with your friend. The Lord is always there, helping good things happen, even when there have been sad things that have happened. So, when sad things happen, does the Lord forget you? And does he stop caring about you?
No.
The answer is no. The Lord does not stop caring about you. He doesn't stop working to help make good things happen. Now, there's a story in the Lord's Word which is all about this. And it's the story of Joseph when he was in the land of Egypt. You might remember that story. Joseph was born as a little baby, and Jacob, his father, loved him. There were 12 boys and 1 girl in his family. He was the youngest of the boys. And his father loved him in a special way and made him a coat of many colors. That's a happy thing, right? Later on, he had 2 really neat dreams. 2 really neat dreams. But when his brothers heard about these dreams, they didn't like him. They were upset with him. They thought his dreams were no good. So they threw him in a pit. Then they sold him at age 17. He was 17 years old when he was sold as a slave into Egypt. They threw him into a pit, then they sold him to a bunch of Ishmaelites who were coming through on their way to Egypt. And he went down into Egypt, 17 years old. He's a slave for the rest of his life. While he was there, though, while he was working in the house of Potiphar, Potiphar learned to trust Joseph. Everything Joseph did was really good. So he put him in charge of the house, even though he was a slave. Later on, Potiphar's wife accused Joseph of a crime, a really bad crime that he did not commit. And Joseph was thrown into jail. While he was in jail, he met the butler and baker, and he told them about their dreams. He said, one of you will get out of jail. And sure enough, the butler got out of jail. When he did, Joseph said, please, when you see Pharaoh again, don't forget to mention me. But when the butler got back into his place, he forgot all about Joseph. Joseph was still sitting in the prison. Okay? And then, finally, Pharaoh heard about Joseph and his ability to interpret dreams, and so he pulled Joseph out of prison. Joseph was able to describe Pharaoh's dreams to him, and Pharaoh ended up bringing him out of jail and putting him second in charge of the whole land of Egypt. That's a really good thing. Finally, Joseph's brothers came down to Egypt. They didn't know Joseph because he was now 38 years old. Think of how different a person can look from age 17 to age 38. Maybe he had a beard on now. They didn't recognize him. Finally, though, he told them, I'm your brother Joseph. And they were amazed. And then, after he had gone away, they talked amongst themselves, and they were afraid for their lives. Maybe Joseph, this powerful ruler in Egypt, will kill us for all the bad things we did to him. But Joseph said kind words to them. He said kind words. And I want to read that part of the story to you right now. This is the end of that story. When Joseph's brothers saw their father was dead, they said, maybe Joseph will hate us and actually repay us for all the evil which we did to him. Then his brothers also went and fell down before his face, and they said to Joseph, behold, we are your servants. But Joseph said to them, do not be afraid, for am I in the place of God? But as for you, you meant evil against me, but God meant it for good, in order to bring it about as it is this day, to save many people alive. Now therefore, do not be afraid. I will provide for you and your little ones. And he comforted them and spoke kindly to them. What a lovely story of forgiveness. And what Joseph was saying was, not only do I forgive you for the wrongs that you did to me, but he was saying, the Lord has taken care of me all the way along. And because he's taken care of me and put me in this position of power, all the people of Egypt and the land of Canaan are surviving because of all the grain that we were able to pull in the years of plenty. So these were messages they had for his brothers. This teaches us something really important about the Lord, and that is that the Lord cares. And he's always there trying to make good things happen in your life and in mine. And even when difficult things happen, he still works. Mr. Swedenborg says that he's even closer to us at times when we're in our deepest, darkest times than he is when we are in good times. So I have a little exercise today that I want to help illustrate this story that we've just read. Up here on the wall, I have all the different parts of the story that we just went through, beginning with Joseph is born, then he gets a coat of many colors, then he has 2 neat dreams, and on it goes around the wall there. And here on this table, I have a bunch of happy faces and a bunch of sad faces. And what I want to do is have different people come forward and put either a happy face or a sad face under the picture that we're working with. So let's take the first picture, for example. Joseph is born. Would you say that's a happy or a sad occasion?
Happy.
That's happy. Okay, so I take a happy face and I put it right here. Just like that, okay? You guys ready to come forward?
Yes.
Okay, get ready. So, the next one, Joseph is given a special coat, a coat of many colors.
Good.
Is that a happy or a sad?
Happy.
Okay, who wants to put up a happy face? Come on, okay? We're going to move right on to the next one. Neat dreams. He has 2 really neat dreams. Is that a happy thing or a sad thing? Neat dreams. Happy, let's say it's happy. Okay, so there we go with neat dreams. Now, the brothers don't like their brother Joseph and they throw him into a pit. Is that happy or sad?
Sad.
Okay, so looks like we have our 2 helpers now. All right, now don't get ahead of us. Wait till I call on the next one. Okay, now, he gets thrown into a pit and then he's made a slave in Egypt. That's sad. Okay, put a sad one there. Does anyone else? Let's give this fella a chance here. Now, Potiphar trusts Joseph and says, you can be in charge of my whole house. Is that happy? I'd call that happy too. You guys are doing great. Okay. Yep, there you go. You're going to find something there too. Okay, so Joseph is accused of doing something wrong that he did not do. Happy or sad?
Sad.
That sounds sad to me. How about now he's in prison? Now he's in prison. Is that happy or sad, did you say? That's sad. So let's get a sad face up there. In prison. Okay? Now, while he's in prison, the prison guard trusts Joseph and says, you can be in charge of the whole prison house. Happy or sad? Happy. Now let's take turns. Take turns. Okay. Now, the butler gets out of jail, but when he comes to Pharaoh, he forgets to tell him that Joseph is in jail and needs to be let out. Happy or sad?
Happy.
Is that happy that he's still in jail? Okay, let's put a sad one there by Butler Forgets. Finally, he gets out of prison and he's put in charge, second in charge of the whole land of Egypt. Happy or sad?
Happy.
Happy. You have a happy face there? Maybe we could put 2 or 3 happy faces by that one.
Yeah.
Here's our ballerina. She's going to finish it off here. Okay? And finally, Joseph is reunited with his brothers in Egypt. Is that a happy event or a sad one? Oh, we have just enough happy faces to cover it all. All right. Good, good. Thank you, everybody, for your help. You can go back to your chairs. Nice. Yeah. That's a fun exercise, isn't it? Lots of happy. Okay. Now, what I have here is a timeline that I've drawn. This is a timeline of all the events in Joseph's life that we just talked about. And up here you have a really happy face. And down here you have a sad face. Oh, this is sad, right? And here are all the different things that happened in Joseph's life. So, Joseph was born. That's pretty happy, isn't it? Right? So I put that up here near the happy face. Then he's given a coat. Wow, that's happy. He has 2 neat dreams, right? Another happy thing. So look at how his life is going. Wow, it's pretty happy. But then his brothers don't like him. That's not very happy. He is thrown into a pit. Oh, that's even worse. Then he's sold as a slave. That's even worse. Okay? But while he's in Egypt, he is put in charge of Potiphar's house. Woo, that's a little happy, right? It's going up in the direction of happy again. But then he is accused of doing something that he didn't do, and he's thrown into prison. So I put that all the way down at the lowest, saddest time maybe of Joseph's life. Now he's in prison. But wait, he gets put in charge of the prison. Let's see. He interprets the butler and baker's dreams. Both of those are happy, but then the butler forgets him, right? But then he comes out of prison, and he's put in charge of Egypt, and he's reunited with his family. Okay, so you see how we've done the graph there? Now, what if I took a piece of paper and covered up the graph right here and said, there's the story of Joseph's life. There it is. Looks like a pretty sad life in the end. And sometimes when you're down there in those really sad places, it can feel like this is what it's going to be like for the rest of my life. But the Lord is always working. He's always working to bring good things, even out of the sad or challenging times. It's an amazing thing about the Lord. So, here's something that you can do if you would like to. You can go home, or maybe this will be part of your, we don't have Sunday school today, do we? Okay, so this might be part of your project at home. And that is to make a timeline of your own. All you do is draw a line here and a line here. You put a sad face down here and a happy face up here. And maybe you start with something really early in your life that's kind of happy. It's nice to start from a happy place. And then you can put the next event that you think of, and the next one after that, and the next one after that, and the next one after that. And then you attach the dots and see what the picture of your life is like. But the one thing I want you to do at the end, the last event that you put on your chart, I want it to be dying and going to heaven. Or just going to heaven. I want you to put that as the last event on your chart. Yes? Do you have a question, Nico?
Maybe we should do that up high, like that happy light.
That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, because Aaron and my grandparents.
Yeah. No, that's what I'm thinking, and I'm hoping that's the way it turns out for you. But that's a nice little exercise that you can do at home. So the Lord makes good things happen. He makes good things happen even when sad things have happened. When an accident happens and you hurt yourself, He helps you heal. When a project you're working on doesn't go quite the way you had hoped it would, He helps you learn good lessons from that. And when things are unhappy between you and a friend, the Lord helps you work together through that, and the relationship gets stronger and better. The Lord does care about us, and He's always making good things happen. Let's pray. Dear Lord God in heaven, thank you for wonderful stories in the Word that are so alive and vivid, that show us pictures not of just the happy things that happen in life, but some of the challenging ones as well. But through it all, we see you leading us and guiding us in the direction of what is good and true and happy and positive in the end. May we all be with you one day in heaven. Amen. Okay, let's have our next song, please.
Our next song is number 177, Trust and Obey. 177.
Is
start by reading the quote for the week, which are some poignant teachings out of the writings of Emanuel Swedenborg about how the Lord leads and cares for us, and about trusting in His providence. We read, "Those who lead a good life and who believe that the Lord governs the universe are such that they trust solely in the Lord and have no anxious concerns about anything else. They are quite sure that all things work for their good, their blessedness, and their happiness forever. Those who believe that they govern themselves are constantly agitated, being carried along into anxious cares about things of the future, and thus into a vast number of anxieties. Those who trust in the divine are not anxious, let alone worried when they give thought to the morrow. They remain even-tempered whether or not they realize desires. They do not grieve over loss. They are content with their lot. They know that for those who trust in the divine, all things are moving toward an everlasting state of happiness, and that no matter what happens at any time to them, it contributes to that state. Those who trust in the Lord are constantly receiving what is good from Him. For whatever happens to them, whether it seems to be advantageous or not, is nevertheless good, for it serves as a means contributing to their eternal happiness. Those who trust in the divine are quite sure that all things work for their good, their blessedness, and their happiness forever. When the Lord is with us, He leads us and makes provisions so that whatever happens, whether sad or joyful, may bring us what is good. This is divine providence." So our theme for the second part today is that anything that happens to us in our lifetimes is an opportunity. It's an opportunity for spiritual growth and advancement. So if we take all of the teachings that Swedenborg writes about trusting in the Lord's providence and boil them all down, we come up with a few statements like these. All things work for our goodness and our happiness forever. Everything in our lives moves toward an everlasting state of happiness. Each and everything that happens to us tends toward what is good. Everything, down to the very least, tends toward the Lord's final purpose, that we may be part of His kingdom. The Lord sees to it that everything that happens, whether sad or joyful, brings us what is good. And no matter what happens, whether it seems to be advantageous or not, contributes to our happiness. So, as a further example, think of one difficulty or challenge that you faced in the last week or in the last month. And once you've got that in focus, try to think of just one good thing that has resulted out of that difficult or challenging time. Often it's not too difficult to discover something, even something very small, something positive that has come as a result of that bad thing that happened. And think about it. Every good outcome that happens in your life and in mine is like a seed that is planted in the ground. And that seed grows into a tree, and the tree bears many fruits. And each of those pieces of fruit has new seeds of goodness inside of it, that when they fall on the ground and they germinate, more goodness comes. So each one of those fruits and each one of those seeds is something that expands forever and ever. Each seed of goodness that goes into the ground will now expand forever and ever. But let's look again at the story of Joseph. He said to his brothers, "You meant evil against me, but God meant it for good." God meant it. God intended it. So does that mean that God intended Joseph to suffer in the land of Egypt? Does He intend that a child should fall off their bike, or slip in the gravel and skin their knee? Does He intend, or did He intend, that the stock market should crash in the 1930s? Does He intend that people should have wars and that people die in wars? And the truth is, for a lot of us, that is the way it can sometimes seem. Somehow the Lord wants these things to happen so that we'll learn the tough lessons in life. We might think that everything that happens is something that He wants to have happen as part of some overarching divine plan. But from a New Church perspective and from our theology, we know that that just can't be true. It can't be true, especially when you read things in the scriptures like the one from Jeremiah that's so familiar to all of us. I know the thoughts that I think toward you, says the Lord, thoughts of peace and not of evil, to give you a future and a hope. Can you imagine a parent or a friend intending bad and hurtful things on someone they dearly love? It's ludicrous to think that. And if it's ludicrous to think about it relative to ourselves, how could it possibly be true of the Lord? How could he possibly intend that we go through hardship? It's not possible. What the Lord intends is not the evil. He intends the good that's going to come out of it later on. He intends the good outcome. You meant evil against me, but God meant it for good. He meant it for good. He meant the good that is the final outcome. In fact, we're told again in our theology, in the Theology of the New Church from Emanuel Swedenborg, that anything the Lord sees could possibly happen in our life if it is something that cannot serve a useful purpose. He will not allow it to happen. Again, we're taught in the Theology of the New Church that evil spirits from hell are not allowed to inspire evils different from or in excess of those which can be turned into goodness appropriate to the person experiencing them. Another teaching says, not a single evil is allowed to happen to a person that does not lead to what is good. So that in the end, we're told, humankind can never be led better than it is, and the Lord arranges all things in our lives in the very best possible way. But notice one more thing that Joseph said. He said, God meant it for good to bring it about as it is this day. He was through the hardship. And he was saying, look at what has happened. He's standing in the future now, looking at what is the outcome. And he's looking back on his life. Looking back over his lifetime, he's able to see now that the outcome has happened, and that everything that had happened along the way was like a series of steps in a pathway of life. And he could see now that all that had happened to him, thrown into slavery, Potiphar's house, accused, in prison, forgotten by the butler, and finally raised out of prison and where he was standing then. He could see that all of it was an unbroken, perfect pathway. Not that the Lord wanted him to go through it, but that the Lord took him through it and brought him to where he finally was. But what would it have been like for Joseph along the way? How would he have been feeling? What would it have felt like to him at the time that he was marching down to Egypt with his captors, a 17-year-old kid in slavery for the rest of his life? What would it have felt like for Joseph when he's serving as a slave day after day after day in Potiphar's house? And then when he's accused wrongly and thrown into prison, and now day after day, month after month, year after year, he's in prison, all the way up until he was 38 years old. What would it have been like for him then? What would it be like for you if you were in those circumstances? He had no idea of what the outcome was going to be that was coming until he was in that outcome. So for that reason, hearing some of these teachings that we're talking about, that are amazing teachings about how the Lord leads us and cares about us and brings good even out of tough situations, hearing those can be a bitter pill to swallow when you're right in the midst of it. Maybe the most that those teachings can do is help us to just hang on and say, maybe something good is going to come of this. I sure don't see it yet, but maybe something good will come. So let's look at Joseph again. What did he do? I'll bet you he had some of the same feelings that we have when we're going through the toughest times of our lives. How could he not have had those feelings? Think he was immune to them? What did he do? He kept living a life of integrity. He just kept going step after step after step. He didn't know the outcome that was coming, but he just kept living a life of integrity. And even in those difficult times, the Lord was able to give him little blessings along the way. He kept putting out for people as much as he could at the times of hardship. And maybe that's all that we can do at a time when we're slogging through something difficult, having no idea what the final outcome is going to be. Maybe in our best moments along the way, we'll be blessed by the Lord with a belief that something good can and even will come out of this hardship that we're experiencing, no matter how hard or how challenging or even physically painful it is. It's especially hard to have this belief in the Lord when you're in serious physical pain. But the Lord is still there. This reminds me of the most meaningful card I have ever received from a friend. It was when I was going through a particularly challenging time in my mid-30s back in Michigan. And I received this card in the mail from a friend who simply reached out in kindness. It was a trifold card. And when it was all folded up, and you're looking at the front picture was of someone walking through a wind and rain storm with ominous clouds overhead. I tried to recreate it here. And underneath that picture, that first picture, it said, "You can't see it now, ... Then you open up you accordion out this card, 3 panels. In the middle panel, you can see that the clouds and the rain and the wind continued to come down, but by the end of the second cloud, the clouds were parting. And in the third picture, in that card, it was just the sun shining brightly, with little flowers and little trees and a little rabbit and whatnot. And under that picture, it said, ... but it's there. You can't see it now, but it's there. The most meaningful card I have ever gotten. I think of it often. This part of our message also reminds me of something that Melody Beattie wrote years ago in her book, Codependent No More, where she said, "Everything from our past has propelled us to this moment. Today prepares us for tomorrow, and it all works for the good. Nothing is wasted." So you'll see a little handout that I put on your chairs for today, which has a number of those statements from Emmanuel Swedenborg about how the Lord cares for us and what it's like as we grow in our trust for him along the way. And then at the end of it is that one by Melody Beattie. Just a beautiful statement. So maybe it's true that each one of us reaches a point, maybe in our older age, or maybe we have moments of clarity along the way when we look back and are able to see how true what Melody Beattie just said is. Everything from our past conspires to what we end up becoming. No matter how happy or good or sad or bad it has been, everything conspires to it. Like a perfect pathway, like a perfect unbroken chain. And someday, we all get a chance to look back and say, it was perfect. I wouldn't be where I am today. It's what led me to become what I've become. Not that the Lord or any of us would long to go through difficult, challenging times, but they're there. They happen. And at some point, the Lord gives us those little miracle windows into what he's doing. Hard to believe when you're right in the middle of it. Hard to see, ... But it's there. It really is. So, at the start of our springtime weather now, let's be reminded that the Lord does care for us. He does care about us, and he's always at work to make good things happen. Let's know and believe that any experience that we have, no matter how hard or challenging it is an opportunity to make choices for our personal spiritual growth and advancement. May we look for those good outcomes, even right now while they're happening. Don't wait for the big one at the end. Try to see them along the way. Pray for them. Reach for them. Live for them. And even if we can't see or feel or experience them right now, remember, they are in the Lord's heart and mind, just waiting to happen. We can keep on cooperating with him, functioning from a place of integrity until each one of those good outcomes finds its way into our lives. and then we can embrace it when it comes. As for you, Joseph said, you meant evil against me, but God meant it for good, to bring it about as it is this day. I invite you to bow your heads for a time of prayer. Dear Lord God in heaven, I guess we don't thank you for the hardships in our life oftentimes, but someday maybe we will. We appreciate how you are leading us and guiding us and caring for us each day. At the end of our service, hear the silent prayers of each one of our hearts. May the grace of our Lord Jesus Christ be with us all. Amen. We rise for the closing of the word. We'll have our closing song.
Our closing song is number 52, God Will Make a Way, number 52. Our postlude is number 188, on that hiding place. Please feel free to sing along or follow along if you'd like. It's 188.
You
second person who could volunteer to pass the microphone around. Are you volunteering for that, James? You have a thought. Okay, well, we'll get you a microphone, and we've got another helper coming now for second microphone. So, thoughts, comments on our topics for today. Go ahead, James.
So this story and how you explained it kind of reminds me about a book that I used to read when I was little called Zen Shorts, and one of the stories in that book was about how something bad had happened, but because of that thing that was bad, something good came out of it, and because of that good, something bad came out of it, which became good, and it kept on going back and forth, so I thought it was very interesting.
Yeah, that is interesting.
Also, that your chart was just a teeny bit off.
Oh, my chart was a teeny bit off. I'm sorry, James. I'm sorry that it was a teeny bit off. How was it off, James? How was my chart off?
So, when the point where he was born is the same exact point where he was thrown in a pit.
Oh my goodness! Oh my goodness! I will redo the chart again. People online, he said he noticed that the point where he was born was the same point where he was thrown into a pit. My goodness! What an inferior chart. Yeah. All right. Anyone else? Yes.
So the piece where the influence of, bad things happening or good things happening into your life on earth, I go back and forth all the time, because when you get into a bad situation, you do say to God, you say, if you just get me out of this one, I promise to do these things better.
I'll never be bad
Yeah,
again.
you're starting to wheel and deal with God, thinking, well, sure, here you go, I'll get you out, but you better, or else.
Yeah, okay.
But the second that God influences us at all, our freedom's removed. So he can't. Otherwise, we won't have freedom to choose between good and evil. All good things come from God, but God doesn't necessarily make somebody do a good thing for somebody else. That still has to be the freedom piece.
Okay, so when you say when he influences us, it cashes in our freedom of choice. You mean if he was to force us to do something?
Right. So if he's punishing you, or the bad thing that just happened is because you didn't do something nice for somebody the day before,
right,
that can't happen because it removes freedom. And so it's been a cycle in my own mind of, well, why do good things and bad things happen? Well, they happen because of all human beings have that freedom to choose. So the guy that's going down the road and hit you, well, he chose something that created that accident. Or he chose to drive too fast. It's not because God made him hit you because you did something the day before that was bad. And so you have to come back to that complete and total freedom to choose between good and evil in order to understand how all these pieces start to fit together. And it's not God punishing you or rewarding you. It's just how it has to be for freedom to take place.
Thank you. This sequel will be preached next Sunday, led by the Reverend Brandon Smith.
Actually, what Brandon said reminds me of a providentialist fallacy. Okay, because the providentialists were people, particularly in the 19th century, but you still see strings now, who say that, well, it's God's providence, therefore we should not fight God's providence. Okay? And I was listening to a show on the Irish famine of the 1840s, and the providentialists in the government said, well, it's God's will that the potatoes failed. Okay? And so we should cut off the relief we started to give to the Irish, because it's God's will that the famine has, and it would be God's will if the famine ended, so we shouldn't do anything.
My goodness.
Okay, and that point of view had a particular resonance within the government because it was cheap. Okay?
Yeah, right. Wow, what a poignant example where that thinking can go. Over here.
I'm an optimistic person, so if you realize in the big picture, the sun is always shining, always. It's only perspective. If we're on the other side of the earth, oh, it's dark. Well, it's actually not. We're just not seeing the sun. If you go in your house, it's still a sunny day. If there's clouds in the sky, it's still a sunny day. No matter what is blocking the sun never leaves. It's always there. So in the sense of the Lord is always there, no matter what is blocking us from seeing Him. So an optimistic of life. It's a sunny day outside right now. So,
Our second sequel will happen on Easter weekend. The theme will be optimism, led by the Reverend Malcolm X. Did I see another hand? Did you have a hand over here? Over here.
Well, I was just thinking, as opposed to what Brandon said, sometimes things happen to us that there is no cost. So just sometimes there's we can look back at it and say, here's why this happened. But what I like to focus on is when we get to a point later in the future and you look back and you go, oh my goodness, this happened and then this had to happen and this to get you to this point, and it just, like your chart, has all these dots along the way, and it never ceases to amaze me how we got from here to here with all these things when the emotions that go along with it were so up and down.
Yeah, how did I ever get here with that stuff?
But you can look at it
I
and
know,
see all this,
I
and
know.
go, oh my goodness, we had to do all that.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's really
Yeah.
crazy. Yeah, mind-boggling. Anyone else? Okay, if not, let's go to our announcements. We'll start with anniversaries. Do we have any April anniversaries? April anniversary, one here. How many years? 39. Okay. And how many years? 24 years. Nice. Well, congratulations. I want to say a real warm word of thanks to an unbelievable amount of hard work that went into our rummage sale yesterday. It really did look like the biggest rummage sale we have ever had. And it was just a tremendous amount of work by a lot of people. I don't know exactly who was head and assistant and all that kind of stuff where I mentioned names, but just thank you to everyone who made that sale happen. I don't know what the results have been yet, but we'll find out and announce that at some point. This is Volunteer Appreciation Sunday. It's a time when we have a little gift out there for each one of you. It's just a little bookmark with all some neat stuff on it. And the little thing says, the little card that goes along with it says, the Glenview New Church is strengthened by our volunteer participation, and we appreciate all that you do to enhance our church community. Thank you, volunteers. And I can say that having been associate pastor here, I thought I knew you people well by the time I was invited to my new position, but I had no idea until I got to where I am now just how many people put in so much time and effort to make this congregational engine run. It just truly couldn't happen without all of the volunteer effort that we have. So thank you, very warm thanks from the bottom of my heart for all of you. It's great to work with all of you. So typically when we do announcements, we just talk about things that are coming up in the next week. But I'll mention some a little bit in the future just so you can get ready for them. The first is that still in this coming week will be a memorial service for Vera Kitzelman, 104 years old, now in the spiritual world. That will be this coming Saturday, the 13th at 3 p.m., and it will be live streamed. I'll be sending out instructions for how to get onto the live stream for people who aren't familiar with that. There is, remember the Healthy Church Match? Remember that Healthy Church Match thing where we could give extra money over and above our regular contributions and have it doubled by Mecca, by our home office? There is still a little pocket of money that's left over in that, and so if you read about that here, there is a closeout opportunity, all right? Read about that. Easter's coming up in 2 Sundays from today, and we will have our annual Easter egg hunt, actually 2 levels of Easter egg hunt, so you can read about that and get ready for it. And also we're looking for Easter volunteers that you can read about. I think especially we're looking for some helpers to be up front with me and Mac, catching flowers for the flower offertory. Okay, so you can read about that there. And finally, going back to volunteers, since we love you, here is a sheet that just says volunteers appreciated, and then it gives some nice opportunities that you could have to volunteer if you aren't already aware of them. Okay? So folks, thanks so much for coming out today. Have a good day and a good week, and we will see you next week for Palm Sunday. Oh, Palm Sunday, one service at 11 o'clock in this room. One service, 11 o'clock in this room, 1 week from today. See ya.